All businesses have obstacles, they have adversity, they have challenges. And it's how your mindset is, which lets you overcome those challenges, overcome those obstacles. And the next guest that we have has had unbelievable obstacles in their lives. They've had literally their business destroyed by bombs. They've been displaced out of the country of their birth and reestablished themselves here in Canada, and just done a wonderful job at combining the entrepreneurship of giving something of value back to their clients, but combining it with a viewpoint and principles that really make us think about or rethink about our business and how we tie it to the things that are important to us. So I can't wait for you to hear my conversation with Tareq Hadhad. Hi, I'm Chris Reynolds, and I'm on a mission to help independent financial advisors build a better business through a remarkable client experience. In this podcast, you're going to learn how to do that from my conversations with the visionaries, the leaders, the independent advisors who are reshaping the future of the financial advice industry. At the end of each episode, you're going to walk away with an actionable idea that you can take and use right now, and it will help you to build a better business today. This is Turning the Page. There are people that you encounter that show you that changing your viewpoint on a situation can change everything. People can take a very negative situation and turn it into an incredibly positive situation, positive for them, and it turns out positive for the world. These people are truly inspiring. They're inspiring to me every time I encounter these types of stories. I think about the resilience of the human spirit and really what we can accomplish if we just have the right mindset. When I certainly met this individual, and I'll go more into his introduction as we go through this, but it illustrates what can be done is if you have passion, if you have focus, and as they say, some people are crazy enough to think that they can actually change the world. And if you remember the old Apple ad, those are generally the people who do. My next guest and his family are those people. They have a great story. It's inspiring. They're passionate, and they're passionate about not only their business, but changing the world and changing the world for the better. I met Tareq. He was a keynote speaker at our last conference in Halifax. And I was truly enthralled by his story as I was sitting there. And actually, I turned to my producer, and I'm like, we got to tell this guy's story as much as we can. So Tareq Hadhad, welcome. He's the founder and CEO of Peace by Chocolate. An incredible story. And I'll let him tell more of his story, but I'll give you the quick introduction. In 2012, him and his family, their home was destroyed in Syria. Their factory that housed the family business, a chocolate making business, was destroyed. And they needed to seek safety in other countries. And it's something that, certainly as Canadians, it's not something that we even think about. And yet this is a realistic thing that happens on a fairly regular basis. He was a medical student at Damascus University, long time peacekeeping advocate. And he joined the medical relief efforts in Lebanon. And then where did he begin his new life? Of course, in Canada. And where in Canada? But of course, the East Coast. And I'll let him tell more about that particular story. But came to Canada and started a small business and really focused on, the business that they had back in Syria, which is chocolate making. And they had a different spin on it, which is Peace by Chocolate. Who doesn't love chocolate? I love chocolate. I love it a little, probably too much. From this inspiring story, a book was written about their story, became a bestseller. There's been a film, Peace by Chocolate, which I haven't seen yet, but it's certainly high on my list. Today, I'm really looking forward. So, Tareq, welcome.
Thank you very much, Chris. This is such a sweet introduction. I think now you know more about me than my mother, my wife. So good for you. I really appreciate that.
As much as I've told your story, what is your story? How did you get here right now? How did you go through all that you've gone through and get to where we are today?
So, my story is a story of a human being who has been through ups and downs since we were back home in Syria and having to leave everything. The moment that strikes me the most, actually, whenever I'm telling my story, and because you were there when I was doing my keynote speech, probably you felt it. It was the moment and the decision that we had to take to leave our homeland, to leave everything behind, to live through war, to survive, and then to really even have the audacity to imagine a world where we can rebuild, we can reinvent, and we can give ourselves a second chance. So our story is all about second chances, and we were really happy to take that second chance after Canada has offered us very kindly the opportunity to resettle here, to come and dream big and restart our lives after such trauma and after such horrific incidents and journey that we had to live through before we were able to leave our country to Lebanon and become refugees. So our story goes back to Syria, right? Probably you remember that in Syria there was kind of the notion that the Syrian stories are worthy of telling only after the war. And you don't hear much about Syrian stories of what happened before the war. You don't hear much actually about Ukrainian stories before the war. Ukraine was not in the spotlight, before the war. You do not hear about Afghan stories. You do not hear about Iraqi stories. You do not hear about a lot of real human stories, unless if it is related to overcoming tragedies, and it's not always about that. I was actually a very happy person in Syria. I was on my way to become a doctor. I got into medical school. My family had a long history of making chocolate since 1986. My father graduated as a civil engineer, and then he started making chocolate in his mother's home kitchen. And then that whole thing, kind of changed the lives for everyone and for the generations to come in my family, because my family believed that business and entrepreneurship is the way to change the world.
Right.
And I loved in your introduction when you mentioned that, yes, you can sometimes be crazy enough to think that you can change the world. My father was that crazy person who really thought that he can change the world back in 1986. And by saying that, I mean that he was always thinking outside of the box. He was just thinking of how he can introduce something new and create something different for a family that had been known for becoming doctors and engineers and lawyers and judges, how he can just break that barrier and really start a business.
Right.
We were not a business family before, and business in the Middle East and in Syria specifically is very hard. There's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of there's the cultural and the mindset in that country is that people certainly can start, but the failure rate was very high because you can't go so much, you can't go far enough. And my father was was very real to his ideas. He was very genuine. He's very authentic. That he really believed he was going to do something different. So he really started believing that entrepreneurship is like Reid Hoffman once said, like jumping off cliffs and building a plane on the way down.
I like that.
And
I like that
then
expression.
he started to build his plane and fly again and really take us to new heights and new levels. So, he started making chocolate in 1986. In 1987, he opened the first chocolate stores in Syria. And that's really how, the whole story changed after my grandmother kicked him out of the building because he was using her home kitchen for his own business. And that's not something that Syrian mothers allow. We also had to fight with my mother here in Canada, actually, when we started the business, because we had to use her own home kitchen to start the business. And she was like, I need my kitchen back. And the mothers, the Syrian mothers, they are always trying to support as much as they can. As long as you don't touch their kitchen, you should be fine.
Yeah. There's one place you can't go. Yeah.
There's one place you can't go. Yes, start a home-based business in your own bedroom. It should be fine. My father couldn't. So yeah, he grew the company really quickly, and it was surprising because chocolate was not always known as a Syrian thing, right? Damascus is an old city. It goes back to thousands and thousands years in history, but it was not connected. It was not correlated. When you think about chocolate, probably you would, especially here in North America, you probably think about Belgian chocolate.
Belgium,
You probably, yeah, exactly. You probably
Swiss,
think, yeah, Switzerland or Belgium or that part of the world, but you really don't think much about Syria. So my father was very aspiring to really bring a new identity to thinking about a new product in a country that was not known for producing it, which is chocolate. And then as I was growing up, I always connected chocolate to universality.
Yes.
Chocolate has a universal theme in it. Chocolate is like music. Everyone understands it.
Yep.
You know, there's a different layers of ambassadorship when it comes to food, but chocolate has its own, actually its own world. And you can really always argue that yes, everyone in the world probably understand chocolate differently. They probably taste it the same, but they understand it differently. And it's always, you know, the way that they understand it, the only common thing is that it brings them joy and brings them happiness, and it connects to something beautiful that happened in their lives. So that's actually what my father was aspiring to do, and he was so successful that he was able to build one of the largest chocolate factories in the
Wow.
entire region, and that was opened in 2006. And he started exporting chocolate everywhere in the Middle East. He was exporting chocolate to Europe. I remember I went to my dad's office one day and I was like, Dad, what are you doing? It was like, we just had a new deal to export chocolate to Belgium. And I was like,
You go,
Dad,
what?
are you exporting chocolate to Belgium? Are you sure about that? And then he was so confident, and he would tell me that he's a big believer, and he really felt that this was a necessary step to export what he was making. So I just really think that chocolate making has been one of the most beautiful things that actually changed, the most beautiful mutation that happened in our family's history. Because you know, when you are an entrepreneur,
Mhm.
you become a part of a much larger story.
Right.
When you take your own career path in life, when you become an actor, or when you become an astronaut, become a doctor, become an engineer, it's pretty much an individual journey,
Right.
right? It's your individual journey. But when you are an entrepreneur, what you are doing is what you are building careers for tens, hundreds, probably thousands of people if you're successful, right? And they become a part of your own story. And you can't do that in other way. You can't do that if you're not an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
That's the
Actually, I never
beautiful
even
part
thought
about
of
it.
that. But yeah, the dauntingness of that, because everybody's life is, more or less you've created a career for them.
That's right. That's right. And they become a part of your vision. They become a part of your story. They become a part of your mission. So the question that you have to ask yourself every single day is it really worth it? And am I really doing the right thing?
Right.
And I believe that my dad had the right answers at the right time back in 1986 when he decided that, yes, he didn't want to become a civil engineer just because he was expected to do the same things that hundreds of thousands of other civil engineers are doing.
Right.
And it was just about bringing creativity in the equation, right? You can't be much innovative when you learn and you really follow a career path that you have been taught in school. And it was just something that I believe very inspiring, not only for the people that they worked actually in our company in Syria, but also for everyone in the community. So we've been really lucky. We've been lucky to have family support. We've been really lucky that everyone was supporting the business in Syria, but also that they were believing in what my father was doing, and also my mother. So my father and my mother, they were both running the company back home. My father was focusing more on growing the business. My mother was focusing more on the local side of the business and making sure that we have the right partnerships.
Right.
And it's very important when you are an entrepreneur is to stay rooted, to have your community behind you. And
Absolutely.
when my family built that community around us, it was amazing how many people actually believe that, yes, we can go global with that company. Although in Syria, you know, there was a lot of challenges. It took my father around 20 years to get the business even registered. So the
20 years.
application, yeah,
Oh
it
my
takes a
God.
long time to get it registered, to get it trademarked, to get, you know, formal networks and registration. It was incredible how, you know, we were able to do it so quickly here in Canada. Probably did it in a few weeks compared to the 20 years.
20
So
years. That's amazing.
you know, that's really what led us to believe that yes, chocolate can change our lives and can change the lives of others. My father's company hired almost 450 employees by the
Wow.
time that the factory was bombed in the war. So in 2012, we lost many family members in the war.
Mm.
We had to make the decision to what are we going to do next. So we left our home. We moved to another house in downtown Damascus that was a little bit safer. And then we hear the news by the end of the year that the factory was bombed. It
Ugh.
was only 10 to 15 minutes after my father had left
Oh my
the
God.
factory with all of his staff. And he didn't know what happened. So he would go back home and he would tell everyone that he survived. He made it back home safely, that everyone is well. His staff went back home. And it was just a heartbreaking aftermath that we had to live through. That was about realizing whatever my family built with blood, sweat, and tears for decades and decades was just gone
Gone in one moment.
in a split of the moment even.
Yeah.
And that was the heartbreaking part because it just brought a lot of uncertainty for the future, right? And when you live through war, this is the most actually heartbreaking thing about it, is that it brings the uncertainty part to your life.
Right.
Because once you start building and building and building, and then you see everything is gone out of nowhere, because no one in Syria believed that there would be a war in 2010
Right.
or early 2011. But out of nowhere, we had to lose everything. So we had to live through that uncertainty for a while until we really just thought about it differently. What
Right.
changed our mindset is that as a human beings, we survived for a reason. And
Right.
that reason is to continue living. And how do you continue living with regret? How do you continue living with thinking about the past? How do you
Right.
continue living with looking backwards instead of, forward? So that's what I wanted my family to believe, is that as long as we are alive, we can rebuild
Right.
and we can start again. And then there is that mindset that I also talk to my family about, is that in any scenario in your life, you can sit down and complain and say you cannot do anything, whether you dig down and find solutions
Right. Or do something about it.
or do something about it to change it. So either you play the role of a victim or you play the role of a victor.
Right.
It's absolutely up to you. And back then in Lebanon, we didn't have an option other than to be hopeful, because we felt, what is life about if you are not hopeful? If you don't have
If you
if
don't
you
have
don't
hope,
have
what else
hope,
do you have?
what
Right.
else do you have? If you don't have hope, what else do you have? So yes, we came to Canada based on that hope. We applied to come to Canada because we were hopeful that this country can really give us the chance to start fresh, to be able to go back to our lives, to be able not to look backwards, but to really dream about a brighter future for our family. And I was really lucky to come here before my family. I set the tone a little bit for them about the
I
weather,
love this
right?
story, but I love this part of the story. So tell them
Yes.
what happened when you got here.
I arrived on December 18, 2015. I was on the third plane that brought Syrians to Canada back then. And I shook hands with the Governor General. He was at the airport in Pearson Airport when I arrived. And I just didn't know where I was going to be resettled. And then they would call me in my hotel room, like, Tareq, your flight is tomorrow to Halifax. And I said, what's Halifax? I want to stay in Canada. And they told me Halifax is in Canada, just on the other side of the country. And then I would go the next day to Halifax and I would meet these absolutely incredible human beings. That they have been very kind and supportive, that they have asked the government to bring a Syrian family to their town, which is
Wow.
called Eniganesh.
Taking an ish.
They
Yeah.
didn't know anything about us. They didn't know anything about me. The only thing they had was actually my name. They didn't know how I look like. They didn't have a picture of mine. They didn't ask about anything, not about my background, not about my faith, not about my ethnicity, not where, what I have been doing in Syria, my goals, my dreams. The only thing that they were really so caring about is that who I am as a person and what are my dreams here in Canada,
Right.
not about, where the place that I left from. And it was just really heartwarming. It was one of the most incredible moments in my life, to really just see human beings on the other side of the planet believing that kindness is the key, that kindness can really change lives.
Right.
And they just had so much empathy and compassion. And I believed in humanity after that so much. So they took me, and then we came to our small town of Eniganesh, and then my family followed me by 3 weeks. So I stayed here in Canada by myself for 3 weeks until my family arrived. But then my mother was still back in Lebanon. She'd be like, "Son, where are we gonna stay?" I said, "Mom, it's a small town called Eniganesh." She was like, "Oh my God, that's a great name. Send me some pictures of Eniganesh." And I was like, "No, no, no, I'm not gonna
No,
send you
no.
pictures of Eniganesh on January 5th." So
Yeah.
I Googled Eniganesh in the summer. I downloaded all the beautiful pictures and then I sent them to my mother. And then she would be looking at the photos and then she would be telling my family, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful. Come and look at the beautiful greens, the blue skies, it's just so vivid and so lively." And then they landed in Canada on January 6th, and then
Oh,
they arrived in Nova Scotia on January 7th. And it was a moment of truth because they arrived in the middle of the blizzard. So my mother would come and then she would go and stay in her bedroom, thank God, for a few days. And then she would only see the snow falling. And she would come to me asking me, "What is the green?" I said, "Mom, it's not the Caribbean. It's Nova Scotia." And she was in love with the snow for only the first few days, and then she hated it.
man, yeah, then that was
So
it.
so that was it. So it was really great how my family really acclimatized, but they really loved how the community was knocking on our door, bringing us food, setting up our house, taking us on tours to grocery stores, telling us all about the life in Canada, telling us how we can overcome, the shocks that many newcomers have when they come here. Cultural shocks are a big aspect of the
Oh,
life
I
of
bet.
newcomers,
Yeah.
right? So someday you would just wake up and ask yourself, "What am I doing here?" People don't speak my tongue, my mother tongue language.
Yeah.
They don't eat the same food. They don't celebrate the same occasions. And you would start really feeling the weight of the
Mm,
immigration
I
journey
bet.
just at that moment, right? Because before that, it's all about the honeymoon. It's all
Right.
about
Right.
living
Yeah.
through
It's
the
the
honeymoon
excitement.
of your
Right. Yeah.
immigration experience. So it was really great that we were able to overcome that in the first few months with the support of our community that helped us to set the tone and start fresh and really build our business from the scratch up. We started selling at the farmers market and then we grew the business from there. And then we called the business Peace by Chocolate just because we believed that peace is for everyone, that peace is all about passion, enthusiasm, advocacy, contribution, and excellence. That's been something that we're very passionate about. You can feel it in our products, you can feel it in our campaigns, you can feel it in what we do.
It's an incredible story. As I said, as I was listening to it when I first heard you spoke, I had actually heard of it. So that's something. But then actually to hear all that you went through and through that journey, to your point, like I don't think Canadians really appreciate that. Imagine building a business up, a successful business, your family's involved in it, you're employing all these people, you're helping their careers. And then because of some decisions that were far out of your hands, your entire business is blown up and you are made to change everything, to not only give up that business, which every entrepreneur knows their business is part of them. It's like their child or their sometimes wicked spouse, but it
That's right.
depends on the particular day. And then having to uproot, go to a completely different country covered in white snow,
That's right.
and then restart. Like imagine the resilience that takes. And I think you said it really, really well, is when you overcome an obstacle and things are put in your way, and in this particular case, just about everything was put in the way, you can either accept it and shrink, or you can go on and overcome that obstacle and go on to do even better, bigger and better things. And I think the point being, everyone has a decision to make at some point, and it's how your mindset is. It's how you think about that particular obstacle that's going to help you in your future. You can decide to be happy, or you can decide to be miserable. Now, the one thing I'm always curious about, and I know you brought it up in the talk, is through your journey, you're going to meet people on both sides of the spectrum. You're going to meet
That's right.
people with sort of natural biases, and coming from Syria, and of course, from the most part, people in North America live in a bubble. They just see what they see on news, and then to the other extreme, from the people with biases to the people with unbelievable kindness. And again, I've been to the East Coast. I know how friendly and wonderful people are on the East
That's
Coast. So maybe, a couple of examples, a couple of things in your story of, both those biases that you encountered, but also the
absolutely.
unbelievable kindness that you have been shown. To your point, as a stranger, the people just want to help you.
100%. Thank you for mentioning that because it's always something that I I tried to think of, because you are always affected by the people around you. You're always inspired, you're always brought down, or you're always, kind of living to be able to translate the values of the people around you into your own values and really bring whatever matches. One of the stories that I always remember really is when I arrived here, and people, because everyone was so kind, everyone was so accommodating. Everyone was asking me, do I need anything? Do I need a prayer mat, for example? Do I need, to do anything differently? Do they need to change their diet? The people that I was staying with, they asked me if they even needed to change their diet to bring,
Wow.
the different kind of meat to really make sure that I'm able to eat it with them. And it was just something very heartwarming because I believe that no one else around the planet would do that. But some of the people that I met really were changing my lives in many ways, and especially those that I did not meet in person, those that they were able to help me without even knowing me. And this is really where you can just think about humanity in different lens, is when there's someone who is intending to help you and they have never met you. They just want to help you
Right.
because they are kind, because it's really in their DNA. And that's what the community of Eniganesh, that's what people in the Maritimes actually, they would give you the
Hmm.
shirts off their back if they felt, that you really needed it. And it was just incredible how, many people have really transformed me. So I came here based on the sponsorship of a community group called SAFE, Syria and Ganesh Families Embrace.
Oh,
And
wow.
this group was made up of, community leaders, retired judges, or doctors, or people that they're really willing to help, and they wanted to make sure that every newcomer who comes here, whether they are refugees or immigrants or from another group, that they are successful. They were mainly helping refugees at the time. But it was incredible that I was the first Syrian to land in Ganesh. My mother used to call me Neil Armstrong. So after I
Yeah,
landed here,
I
now there's
like it.
around 200 Syrians, right? So there is quite a lot of people who live in this community and they call it home. It's the people who come from away. But some of the stories that
Right.
have shaped, the way that I look at my new life was the first few days that I came here. So I bought my first phone number in Canada in around I think it was January, when I came here. I just went and looked for opportunities to communicate and connect with the community. So
Right.
the only way was actually to buy a new number because my other number was not working. I went into a store and I bought my first Canadian phone number, and then my phone was ringing after 1 hour, and I was like, "Who's calling me? I didn't give
Yeah.
my number yet to anyone." And then I pick up the phone, and there was a lady on the other side of the line, and she was saying, "Hey, Catherine, what do you at?" And I was like, "Excuse me, mom.
What?
What do you mean?" She was like, "Is this Catherine?" I was like, "Obviously not. No, this is not Catherine." She was like, "Who's this?" I'm like, "No, who are you? You're calling me." And she was like, "Oh, I'm just trying to call my daughter Catherine. She has not answered her phone actually in 2 months. She went to New Zealand. She moved to New Zealand. And I just wanted to make sure that she's okay." And I was like, I just got her phone number actually. Probably she did not pay her bills for 2 months. That's why
That's
Bell
why I got
Bell gave me
the
her
phone.
phone
Yeah.
number. So it was really interesting that the conversation lasted up for 17 and a half minutes. Although it was
Wow.
the wrong number,
Right.
but the woman was asking me, about my life, and she was like, "Your son, how is your life, and where do you live?" And I said, "Well, actually, I just arrived here. I came here as a refugee, and I live in." And again, she was like, "Oh, I live in the valley here in Nova Scotia, which is around 3 to 4 hours away
Right.
from my town." She was like, "How is the weather up there?" And again, she was like, "Oh, it's great." And the story is, she was on the phone with her husband and they were listening to everything I was saying. And I had broken English at the time. I just arrived in the country. I didn't
Right.
speak much before I came here, but they were connecting with me so much based on not only about where I came from, but also for me as a young man who arrived here with big dreams, and they just, wanted to make sure that I'm okay, that I have everything I need. And that was very inspiring by itself. So
Wow.
they
Yeah.
they they kept talking to me for 17 and a half minutes. And then I told them, "Oh, there's someone at the door. I will call you back." And then I really thought that they were just calling their daughter
Right.
And then I believe that probably that would be it. This is a conversation they would have. If you call someone on the wrong number, probably you're never going to have a 17 and a
Yeah.
half minutes conversation with them.
Exactly.
But they did have it with me. And after they knew I was a newcomer, after they knew I was a refugee, they saved my name and my number, and they kept calling me every second month to
Oh my
check on me.
God. Wow, that's fantastic.
That mother and the father that they were calling me, they were one of the kindest, actually, people that I've met in my entire life. They really wanted to support, they wanted to help, and I will never meet anyone like them.
Oh,
I believed
wow.
because in May of 2018 they called me and they invited me to their son's wedding.
Oh my God, that's an
And
incredible
and
story.
after they just wanted to make sure that I'm doing fine, they just wanted me to become a part of their family celebration. And there's nothing like it. I have never really lived through any experience like that. Even, with all the kind people that I have met, there was never actually someone who just wanted me to become a part of a big celebration, a very memorable celebration to your family. Because
Right.
you only invite to weddings, those that you really care about, those that
Right.
they have, become a part of who you were and who you want to become. And it was just incredible and a very wonderful experience. So this story actually changed the way that I look at things. It even inspired me. We were at the time in 2016 starting our Peace on Earth Society, which is where now it manages all of our um, philanthropy,
Right.
community contributions. It's our door and our gate to really make sure that the business is not only focusing on the financial statements, the balance sheets, and the income statement, but also there's another part of that equation, which is the people.
Right. Yeah. The important part.
They're very important part because without people, you won't have business
Right.
because your customers are people, your employees are people, your family is people.
People.
The people around you actually are becoming a part of your story just because they are people. So if you do not know the value of people in your own business, then you're doing it wrong.
Right.
A lot of actually entrepreneurs and CEOs, they would just think about people as their customers.
Right.
And when they think about putting strategies or thinking about plans, they don't talk about the people that they have on their team. They talk about the people that they want to serve, who are their customers. And they just
Right.
think if they took care of that part of the puzzle, everything's going to be all right, that their business is going to boom. And this is actually the most awful mistake that any CEO
Absolutely.
or any entrepreneur can do is if they really forget the foundation and the reason of why they are doing what they are doing and why they are successful. But the external part of that people equation is your community. How do you take care of your community if
Right.
you are successful in business? So that's why I really believe in something called the ROK. So in business, there is the ROI, the return on
Yeah.
investment. But there's another thing which is very much more important. It's the ROK, the return on kindness.
Kindness. Oh, I love that. I'm going to use it.
The
I'm stealing that, by the way.
the ROK important than your ROI.
Yeah.
The return on kindness is much more important than your return on investment. It's something that you really need to work on. If you are successful in business, it is your moral responsibility to lift others to success, and that's really what I believed in. So the community part was led by our Peace on Earth Society. We started talking to Canadian Red Cross, making donations to the first campaign that we actually were part of was the wildfires that happened in Alberta. And then
Oh,
we
yes. Yeah.
we kept really thinking about how can our business inspire much larger campaigns and work on commitments with 10 Partnership for Refugees to hire refugees in our company, but also to work with other campaigns like the Trans-Canada Trail. Now we have just released a new campaign, relaunched that campaign with them last year to support trails that have been impacted by climate change events.
Mm,
2023 had one of the worst climate change incidents actually across Canada, from wildfires to floodings. In Nova
yeah.
Scotia alone, we have seen many
Everything. Right?
catastrophes,
You've
right?
seen fires, flooding,
Floodings, exactly. Yeah,
wild world weather. It's been crazy
exactly.
there.
There's been really wild last year. So it was something that inspired us with even many more organizations like Phoenix Youth Programs, Canadian Mental Health Association. A lot of our partners as well are Indigenous communities that we try to support by promoting and by helping and by telling their the stories of connections of newcomers,
Right.
refugees, to indigenous people. One of the gaps that we find is that many newcomers, they do not know the real stories. They do
Right.
not connect with indigenous people. They just don't think about the injustices, about the mistreatments, about the history of built up of not sharing the equity, not really building up roots for prosperity for many communities, not only indigenous communities, but many marginalized
Right.
communities in the
Communities.
country, that they were not able to become a part of the discussion. They were not able to join the table. They were not invited. But then what happened after, we started building up these campaigns is if they don't have a seat for you at the table, just bring your own chair and sit and
Right.
really become a part, because no one ever is going to be no one ever is I think is going to be looking out for our communities if we do not start to promote our stories firsthand. And that's what I wanted since we came here. Start talking about who we are and our story, because no one else is going to be asking us actually if we don't do that firsthand. So we were really lucky, with meeting many kind people, but as well there are many people who were against the idea of us being here. Someone came to me and asked me, "Why did you come here to take our jobs?" When I landed here
Yeah.
in
The
Ganesh, when
biases. Yeah.
there's not a lot of people, right? That they wanted you to not succeed in your business. And I just wanted to prove the case that, yes, we did not come here to take jobs. We came here to create them.
Give up.
So there is quite actually a lot of people who were very kind, who were very understanding, who wanted us to succeed. On the other hand, many people just felt that we should not have come here. And it's now actually an increasing conversation across the country, with whatever
Immigrants.
is
Yeah. This is
happening
happening.
about immigrants, international students, refugees. And the conversation that people are having, is, yes, let's take care of our own people in this country before we just open the doors for someone on the other side of the planet. Let's build more homes to Canadians instead of just focusing on spending more money on bringing people from overseas. And that is the wrong question to ask, because
Right.
it's not about, whether we do this or that. It's about finding the right balance.
Right. Do
The
both.
whole
Right.
thing, exactly. You don't have to stop doing things. It's the wrong question to ask. And I just felt that certainly we could have started talking about the issues that has been rising in the past few years on a lot more earlier basis. I think I've been advocating for healthcare even since I came here. For example, we found that healthcare systems were not living up to the standards during the pandemic, right?
Right. Right.
And
Absolutely.
one of the early stories I was talking to CBC about it when I came here is, as I'm in my medical background, the um, injustices and I think the unfairness in treating those who are trained outside the country, and the Canadian experience side of the puzzle too. That
Right.
was
Coming in there.
that was very very much on the wrong side, I think. And I just wanted to make sure that my family and we have a chance to really become a part of that big conversation about immigration, but also about the advocacy for peace. So it all starts with peace, and
Yep.
then we take it all from there. So, talking about bias and finishing on bias, it's all about making sure that you are not targeting to please everyone in
Right.
whatever you're doing as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, or
Right.
as a leader.
Right.
It's about making sure that you are living up to your values in the circumstances and situations that you are asked to show up, and you are asked to prove that you are a true leader.
Right.
So leadership is not about, making sure that everyone's happy.
No.
Leadership is about making sure that your values do not change when people are expecting you to make them happy.
Right.
And I
Exactly.
just really felt that our moral compass for leadership has always been about being kind, being supportive, being communicative, and certainly taking care of your own people.
Tareq, I love it. As I said, I love the story. I love the entrepreneurship. I love the passion. I love to point the craziness to think that you can change the world, and you and your family are actually doing it. It's inspiring. It's something that I think everyone can get around, and the lessons that I think I've taken from it, and I will share with my audience, is To your point is once you have your values, once you know sort of what you're trying to do, and Peace by Chocolate really defines what you and your family and your business is trying to do, and people can rally around that mission. They can rally around that, not only that statement, they can rally around what you guys stand for, your principles, and of course, everybody loves chocolate. That's all I can think about. So thank you very much for being on the show. Is there any last words for our audience before we let you go?
One of the top advice actually that I've got ever is about making sure that you put in the hard work, that you focus on being a persevering human being, never giving up, and staying focused. These are really the most important things that you can do for yourself and for your community, and always to look for better things to doing things. It's there are always better ways actually to do anything, and I believe that we have found a community that has made us comfortable in being who we are and really dreaming big. So now we're just continuing to live our Canadian dream, and I really appreciate every platform that has been given to me to share my story, and I really appreciate the conversation with you, Chris.
Well, it's a great story and great lesson for all of our listeners. So thank you very much. We have Tareq Hadhad from Peace by Chocolate. I look forward to your keeping track of all your adventures, and good luck with everything.
Thank you very much, Chris. Been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks for joining me on Turning the Page. What did you learn from today's episode? If you follow me on LinkedIn, please drop me a comment there. I'd love to chat with you about it over a virtual coffee. Send me a message on LinkedIn, or you can do so at our website. The link's in the show notes. I'm Chris Reynolds, and until next time.